I am Brennan Lee Mulligan. I am the Dungeon Master for Dimension 20, a College Humor cast member. I've taught and performed at the Upright Citizens Brigade Theater, wrote the webcomic Strong Female Protagonist with my collaborator Molly Ostertag. I have gone touring around the country with the Story Pirates, and I'm a proud game writer and staff member of the Wayfinder Experience. Those are all the big things that I did that would let you know who I am, not as a person, but as a guy doing work out in the world. That's who I am. Dimension 20 is an anthology D&D actual play show created by College Humor and its streaming platform service Dropout. The core cast is Lou Wilson, Allie Beardsley, Zach Oyama, Siobhan Thompson, Emily Axford, Brian Murphy as our awesome PCs, and myself. For those who don't know what a D&D actual play show, it's a bunch of us funny comedians playing very heartfelt games of Dungeons and Dragons, where we play the game. We have awesome battle sets made by Rick Perry. The shows are edited by Noah Diamond, Aaron Hasidim, our director Michael Schaubach puts it all together, and we have an awesome time making this show for you guys, where we play a funny game, tell a heartfelt story in a new world almost every time. We've had Fantasy High set in a sort of high school for heroes. You know, what if John Hughes ran a game of D&D? We have the Unsleeping City, which is a game of D&D set in a magical version of New York. We had Tiny Heist with our guests, the McElroys, and Lily Dew and Jess Ross, which was what if the Borrowers did Ocean's 11. We had Escape from the Blood Keep, which was kind of like an office workplace comedy set in a place a lot like Mordor from Middle-earth, right when the bad guys are about to lose. And that one had guests like Matt Mercer, Erica Ishii, Ife Wadiwe, Amy Vorpal, Mike Trapp, and Reka Shankar. And coming out right now, we have A Crown of Candy, which has our original cast in a world of like Candyland meets Game of Thrones. So check it out. There's a lot to look at. Let me assuage your fears. Yes, there are many more seasons of Dimension 20 in the works. We got 2 seasons in the works right now that are coming up. We always have the ability to go back and do more live seasons if we ever want to do them. Dimension 20 is not going nowhere, baby. We have a really fun side quest in the works. I already know who's playing it, and I already know what the campaign setting is. So, you know. But I can't say. It must remain secret for the time being. And then we have another full season in the works as well with the core cast, which I also can't reveal the setting for that one. But oh boy, do we have some fun stuff coming up. So we ain't going nowhere. Thank you for the question. Well, thank you for this question. I have to be careful not to spoil anything. That decision was serving multiple masters because of how complex the situation was there. I actually can't say too much about this question other than that decision was improvised. It had to be. I could never have anticipated the things leading up to that decision. And if you have no idea what I'm talking about because you haven't watched season 1 of Fantasy High, just watch through the end of episode 2. And if you don't want to watch anymore, then no hard feelings. We can part ways amicably. Watch through the end of episode 2. Improv classes are great. I think people should take them just to take them, not even for D&D related purposes. Look, the truth is, however you and your friends are playing your game at home is the correct way to play the game if you're all having a good time. It is not necessary to do improv to play D&D. It's not necessary to do voices or accents to be a dungeon master. It's not necessary. You don't even have to ever speak in character. Like if you just want to play a dungeon crawl where you're just like narrating through social interactions and you're not speaking in like character dialogue, it's all groovy as long as the people at the table are all having a good time doing it that way. Conversely, with improv classes, if you have the means to, it's the most incredibly rewarding stuff I've maybe like ever done. Like it's incredible life training. It makes you better at listening. It makes you better at understanding your own thoughts and emotions and like honest self-reporting of your internal state. I think it makes you more self-aware. It introduces you to great, wonderful, funny people. It's a wonderful like skill to master. And if you want to play D&D in a more improvisational way, like you see on Dimension 20, then absolutely taking improv classes is going to help with that. So I think that it's more like, it is not necessary to take improv classes in order to play D&D, but if you look at D&D games that you either watch through actual play or you've been a part of at a table and you go, I love how those people play, they are all improvisers, then I think absolutely you can take those skills and apply them, just like you could take any skill set and apply it to your game. If you are like a war gamer and you want to apply that to D&D, that's a great skill set to take. If you are like someone who's very into intrigue and political plotting, you take that and apply it to D&D. So I think that improv is one of many skills you can apply to your game, and if that makes it more to the taste of you and your fellow players, then all to the good. What would I order at Denny's? I think a big old plate of dice. Yeah, that's right. I'm ready to eat my dice. Yes, we have character creation sessions with the players where we go into these sort of rich backstory elements. We develop stuff. Character creation is the most important part of your campaign. I mean, that it seems sort of cliche or simple to say it, but like the process of giving world background to your players, letting them create their characters, that's a process that I always want to be intimately involved with. And oftentimes I want to hear like multiple ideas for characters so that I can like weigh in on them, right? If I know that the campaign has elements of weird secret arcana in it and someone's like, oh, I either want to play a warlock or a druid, I might say, hey, if you play a warlock, there's going to be more stuff for you to do in this setting. I think that stuff is helpful for PCs. So I like to really collaborate with the PCs, and conversely, when they give me stuff, I collaborate with them. Like when they create backstory or family, I grab all of that like it's gold and I sew it into the plot of the world. Like so that when we start, even in a session 0, where we just are like, it's not even canon yet, we're just like getting the character voices down, I want to have them feel as enmeshed in their world as a living person does in ours, where they know people in the world. It is something that they feel a sense of mastery or familiarity with. Like all of that is critical. Nothing makes D&D less fun for me than having a character I'm playing that feels completely dropped in to an adventure that has nothing to do with them. You just go like, oh, why am I here? What is any of this stuff? Why do I care about any of this? I know that a lot of people might not feel the same way, and that's totally fine. But for me, it's like, oh, I play these games to feel like I'm living in a story, and characters and stories are attached to the world building of the world that they're in pretty intimately. And if I can't recreate that, then I feel like I'm letting down players that are also looking for that lived story experience. I love playing parents in Fantasy High and family members in all the other seasons and close friends and getting into those scenes where you're talking about stuff that's really meaningful, kind of to the character in question, of course, but also just meaningful, I feel like, in a general sense, where you're talking about family, love, betrayal, acceptance, growth, meaning, all these things that kind of tackle bigger emotional issues. The hardest part about it, I don't know that there is a hard part about it. That's just a part of the game, and I think storytelling I'm very drawn to is like, I don't know, the bigger picture stuff. Maybe bigger picture is not even the right word for it. really emotionally central stuff, the stuff that gets at the core of what makes a character tick or what they're worried about. Because I think the thing with any storytelling is always that you're seeing such a tiny fraction of a character's life. And much like, like how fractals, it's like you go deeper in and the image of the larger thing repeats. Like a story is a tiny snapshot of a character's life, but like a fractal, you need to be able to infer the wholeness of the character from the 20 minutes or 2 hours or season or whatever amount of time you got to spend with them, right? So you're seeing this tiny window into their life and it needs to reflect the whole. So playing NPCs that are that heartfelt and that make connections that are that strong is the most gratifying part of the game. It's something I like look forward to and really engage with, because it's like, yeah, let us cut to the quick as much as we can. Thank you for the great question. Wow, this is an extremely morbid question, but very fun. I think if you're going by the song I've listened to the most, that is like definitely in the running for my favorite song of all time, The House That Jack Built by Aretha Franklin. That would be that, and they could play my ashes and listen to that. It's an upbeat song to be made out of remains. Well, what are you gonna do? 100%. We would love to revisit the Unsleeping City. I was just talking on our Dimension 20's adventuring party, our sort of like weekly Dimension 20 talkback show with the cast. We would love to go back to New York, go back to the Unsleeping City. Emily was saying she wants to play Sophia again. We have these awesome characters that are, some of them are just at the beginning of their like heroic journey. Yeah, that would be so fun to go back to the Unsleeping City. There's so much more to explore there. Yeah, we're into it. And maybe if we get a chance, whether it be a full season, but definitely like doing a live show or going out on a tour with those characters, mixing it up and playing different campaigns in different cities, why not? That would be so much fun. Thank you for the question. Thank you so much. The advice for novice DMs, number one, start. Just start. Just run a game. There is a preponderance of advice out there online. A million great channels that offer advice. You can go to all over the internet and a million great channels to find DMing advice out there at any kind of level of experience or focusing on a particular aspect of the game. The main thing is to just start playing, because the way you're going to get better is through practice, and most people just want to play a game and they will be happy that you're running it. They don't need you to be expert level on your very first time running. So I think the best advice I can give to novice DMs is just start running a game. You know how to do it. If you've watched an actual play, if you've seen the game be played, you've seen a couple of videos, you read the books, you're ready. Just start. And also, there's no like being a master of every element of the game doesn't guarantee that you'll be fun. I know that's like kind of, I'm putting some people on blast here, but like there's a worry from people that tend to ask questions about DMing of like, what if I don't know the rules? Well, knowing a rule or not knowing a rule maybe isn't the thing that's going to make or break your game. The thing you should get started on right away is talking to your players. And in terms of tailoring the game to them, talk to them. They'll tell you what they want. Just talk. As in almost everything in life, the number one skill you can cultivate is listening and actually understanding what someone is saying when they're saying something and why they're saying it. So listen to your PCs. They will tell you what they're interested in. And then practice makes perfect. You just got to get that first game started, and that will be your best tutor. More than anything I or some other internet DM can tell you, your experience at the table will make you better. Thanks for the question. I do try to make players cry, and I've been very upfront about this. Storytelling has an incredible capacity for catharsis, and especially when that storytelling is being delivered in improvised first person, where your players have a tremendous emotional connection to the characters that they're playing and have the ability to be surprised by twists in the story, even more so than if they were consuming a piece of media passively. Narrative fiction has such a potential for growth and catharsis in people. I often seek media that's going to either make me cry or make me furious or make me feel something strong or powerful, because I think that is the strength and sort of role of storytelling as a cultural tool. There was a study that they did a long time ago that was sort of, they had an ethical test. They had a test of like, what would you do in these like, would you return a wallet with money in it? And like, the sort of like ethical questions. But the thing they were really experimenting for was they exposed different groups of people to different stimuli prior to the ethics test. One of which was like, a series of ethical edicts, and the other one was like a religious text, and the other one was like a series of legal statutes, things that you would assume would like get people thinking in that ethical space. The one that produced absolutely the highest marks in terms of people answering that ethical test and being the most selfless was a short piece of narrative fiction. I think that's crazy. I think it's beautiful. There's something about that where it's like, the thing that most made people feel connected to people outside themselves was a piece of fiction that made them be in the mind of another person for a little while. So I think that, making your players cry or making content that makes us feel genuinely grieving and sorrowful, even for a made-up person, expands our heart and makes us more connected with real people in the real world. That's what I like to think. That's what I tell myself. But I think that it's probably true. I feel endlessly grateful and in a positive way, like shocked that the show has reached so many people on that level. I guess it's not. Look, I know that the 6 PCs are brilliant improvisers and also just some of the loveliest people in the world. So I'm not surprised that people have attached to them and their incredible work. And again, I think if you look at Fantasy High in those seasons, like Siobhan's work as Adine, and Emily's work as Fig, and Murph as Riz, and Fabian, Flu, and Gorgug and Zach, and Kristen, Allie, that we have like these really well-crafted characters that just hit something in the core of people and make them so easy to relate to. And there's something in every one of their journeys in season 1, and then in our live season for sophomore year, Fantasy High sort of season 2, that just makes it really effortless to be impacted by the struggles of these characters. Our players made characters whose struggles and journeys and wants and needs had something so deep and profound to latch onto that I don't think it would have been possible for a person with a beating heart in their chest to not be just like deeply impacted by those stories. They're really, really beautiful. And for the Jawbone scene in season 1, I'll keep it spoiler free for those that have not watched yet. Yeah, when I see people share that, it's just completely overwhelming. It's I worked for many years as a camp counselor. I've worked as a nanny. I've worked as someone who's taught and tutored kids. So like caretaking is something that I obviously am very passionate about, but just as an individual, like me being interested in that doesn't mean I'm necessarily going to be, doing that in this context. Even if I want to, I don't know that I'll be successful in doing that. So to see it connect, I could never have anticipated. And that's the part of the show that really leaves you rocked as a creator. When people are like, oh man, that's great, that's cool, that's funny, you're like, whoo, good, thank goodness, I'm glad you liked it, that's awesome. But then when people are like, hey, this really impacted me, it helped me in a moment where I needed some help, you kind of, you have to just like, I don't know where you store that. It's too big of praise almost. It's so meaningful that it leaves you kind of like, whew, okay, thank you so much for that. Because it's just so, it means so much. So to anyone that's ever watched the show and taken something of value for their own lives, especially related to something like mental health or identifying with one of the characters' journeys or struggles in a way that gave you something usable in your day-to-day life, that's like the highest achievement that a piece of art or media can have. And so it just is profound. It's a profound sense of gratitude that our show was able to do that. Thank you, anyone that has ever shared those thoughts and sentiments. And if I ever haven't responded to any of them, it's just because whenever I see something that meaningful, I kind of go glassy-eyed and get a 1,000-yard stare, like, oh, the feelings are too much. But they're not too much. They're perfect. And thank you for sharing them. Thanks so much for this question. I love Garthy O'Brien too. They're one of my favorite NPCs. I love to play them so much. Your guess is uncannily accurate. Garthy O'Brien is an Aasimar with, if they were a player character, they would have levels in Devotion Paladin and Divine Soul Sorcerer. So they're actually a multi-class, is it pronounced Sorkadin or Sorcidin? Probably Sorcidin, right? But their stat block is much pared down. And I talk about this in other DMing advice things I've done, which is that for NPCs, like if you look at the NPC stat block for an Archmage, they don't have all the class features of a like 20th level wizard, even though they are a 20th level wizard. So Garthy O'Brien is similar. Like any NPC that has levels, they're pared down a little bit. Like Rog is a barbarian, but Barkrog's stats are a little bit pared down. It's just a good piece of design that you want to do to give yourself an easier time, and also your player characters, because you don't want your players sitting around the table as you navigate like how many channeled divinities your whatever character has left over. NPCs should be a little simpler. Thanks for the fun question. Thank you for your request. This is sort of a question asking time, so I'm not sure that, I guess you are asking for me to spare Gilear's life, and in that sense it is a question. No, I'm not going to spare Gilear's life. I'm coming for him. He lives in a world that is ruled by the capricious whim of an extraplanar being that has it out for him. That's his reality. And he can eat all the yogurt he wants. But one day I'm going to get him. I'm going to get him. Thank you for your request, and hope you have a great day. I'm going to kill Gilear. Bye. The way you balance honoring player decisions versus preserving your storyline does vary depending on the type of game you're playing and the type of choice that you're trying to honor. I think you got to weight that scale like 99% towards honoring player choices. To the utmost of your ability as a dungeon master, always throw your stuff out the window, because that is fictional, right? Like, it doesn't, even if it's floating around in your head, that's just it's a thought, it's an idea. Until it gets put into the actual play of the game, it's nothing. And especially if the only tangible thing at the table is the joy of your players engaging in the game. That has to be your first priority. Now, I will say that there are some things that are a little bit different. Like in Dimension 20, we have pre-made battle sets in our fully edited and filmed seasons. So the trick for me is like, how do you honor player choices and also make damn sure we get to Rick Perry's awesome Dwarven Skater Park in the next 90 minutes? Oh God, where is the time going? So that's real. But I think that to the utmost of your ability, there's a great Eisenhower quote for DMs, which is that plans are useless, planning is essential. And what that means is any given plan, any given goal that a DM has for a scene they want to see, it's got to be disposable. You have to make the game about what the players are interested in. That being said, you should still go in with plans, right? Because good players often want to engage with what you have created, right? It's not like players do a lot of chaotic things, but they also, if you're playing with them genuinely, will love your story. So there's an interplay there where a lot of times like the choice a player makes will lead them back to your storyline. So don't keep the reins too tight. They'll get back to whatever the main thing is going on, but you got to let them go and play. Otherwise it becomes miserable and untenable at the table. My first time being a dungeon master, I was 10 years old. I had a bunch of my friends over that were also 10-year-olds at a table in my mom and pop's house that they still have. And I still play D&D at these decades later whenever I'm back home on the East Coast. And we got pizza from Benny's Pizzeria. We sat down and I DM'd the worst session of my life. It was so bad that all my friends yelled at me, and rightly so, because it was a bad adventure. I had a bunch of 10-year-old boys and I led them on an adventure where secretly the villain had a complex backstory and all you needed to do was befriend him. I can't tell you how unlikely it is that a group of 10-year-old boys will move through the world with grace and empathy, especially if their characters all have swords and magic. They wanted to chop somebody's head off, and I was so mad that they didn't that that was rough. Literally at the end of that session, I told my mom this was the most stressful day of my life. But immediately after that, I asked my mom to schedule a session with everyone's parents the next weekend. So my advice for any starting DMs out there also would be don't give up and know you're scared of running a bad session. That's okay. You will. And even if you get a lot of experience, you still will run some stinkers some of the time. Nobody bats 1,000. But you just got to get up to the plate and swing. Baseball. This is a hard one. I have a lot of favorite obscure animal facts. It's also hard to tell what's obscure or not obscure. Like that very much depends on the knowledge base of whoever happens to be watching this question. The thing that came to mind while I was answering these awesome questions is just that whales, porpoises, dolphins are descended from like either like ursine canine style beings that like went back into the ocean, which on an evolutionary level is just really funny to me because life started in the ocean and then moved on land. So it's like the ultimate like wishy-washy evolutionary trait. It's like, listen, whales obviously figured something out. That's a big animal, apex predator, most ecosystems it's in. But just the idea of like, you know what? I've been kicking it on land for like, a couple, million years or whatever. I think we messed up. I think we got to go back to the ocean, man. It was so cool in there. And then also just the idea of a mammal spending so much time in the ocean that eventually its body becomes like, to look at a whale and be like, that used to be like a bear. We live in a wonderful, beautiful, crazy world. And, maybe one day I too will return to the ocean and completely change my entire body to be unrecognizable. We'll see. Am continuously blown away by the breadth and depth of the show's fan community's compassion, engagement, talent, raw just talent and creativity, their sense of humor. I think we have like the funniest fans in the world. I'm out here getting my ass roasted by fans every day. It's usually truly hilarious. They're great. A lot of them are I'll be real, way funnier than me. So kudos to them, inevitably eating my lunch and leaving me in the waste bin of history, because they all slap. The fans are so cool. And yeah, it's just a deeply kind community of people. In terms of having anticipated it, you couldn't. You would be the most conceited person in the world if you were like, I bet our fans are going to be this cool one day. I mean, if you're a creator, you just hope that anybody watches or engages with the stuff you create. And to watch people engage with your work and support it, and then also be just unanimously delightful, is a boon that no creator could possibly deserve. It's just complete grace and good fortune. To everyone that supports the show, you have all of my love and gratitude. Thank you so much for, through your involvement with the show, allowing us to make it. You're why we're here. And I mean that both on an emotional level and also just like a logistical level. You are why we were able to do this. So thank you so much. The best donut in the world. God, they're all perfect. Every donut is just one of God's perfect children. And I don't actually know if I feel like I'm breaking someone's heart by picking a single donut. I will say that I think that the experience of the perfect donut has a lot to do with the emotional context you're in when you have it. And for that reason, I would say probably that Donut Pub on 14th Street in New York City, like open 24 hours, bright fluorescent lights. You get an old fashioned, dip it in a cup of coffee. They've nailed cake donuts and more like bready donuts. There's just something about how classic it is, and you're just in the right headspace for it. Get a cup of coffee, 1 a.m. Maybe I'm just wistful for a different age. No, those donuts were really fucking good. Those were good donuts. The most challenging part of DMing for an audience, I'm going to answer this by disagreeing with the premise of the question. Having an audience of the show is a huge benefit. It allows us to keep making the show. People engaging with and supporting the show is only a boon and a blessing. The only thing I would say for any DM that wants to make actual play material is by developing an audience, you can sometimes in your mind worry more about the audience than you're worrying about your players at the table. And that's something that I think is a guiding principle for me, at least, which is that I always, when I'm running the game, I'm running the game to be the most fun possible for the 6 people at my table. I'm not necessarily thinking of the viewers at home, or at least I'm thinking about them as a producer of the show, but as a dungeon master, I'm just thinking about how to make my players happy. Because I think if you don't keep your game pure in that way, if you don't remember that the reason people are tuning in is to see friends having a fun time playing a game, and you lose sight of that, the risk is actually much higher. And I think people at home can tell when a dungeon master on an actual play show has lost sight of the game being for the players at their table. So hopefully when people watch me, they can tell that the thing I'm the most dedicated to doing is making sure those folks that are playing with me are having the best time possible. And that communicates through to them and lets them know that this is like a genuine game, and hopefully is the reason that they're watching. Thanks for the question. This is an amazing question, and thank you for asking it. And thank you for having the courage to ask it, because obviously, for a lot of reasons, people, I think, through the ages have been afraid of asking the big questions, the things that are really meaningful and that get at the heart of what we are all doing here, why we are here, what is our role in this moment? Is there meaning in the universe? It's hard to say. These are the questions that keep us up at night. The answer to your question, and again, I would say that I only know this through my personal studies and research. I have been peer reviewed and I have been published in several cosmological journals, but take that for what you will. There's a lot of work that's left to be done. The answer is no. When you nut in the astral plane, it does not push you backwards because the state of that plane is relativistic. So actually, even though you will appear to be going backwards, the astral plane is actually going forwards. Thank you for the wonderful question. Hopefully I've answered to the best of your ability. You know, waka waka.